Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears and the Museum of Misfortune. This is a very special episode because, as you can see, we have a different car here. No, I have not lost my mind and bought another Prelude. This is my friend Andrew's car, and in this video, we're going to be doing something really cool to it. Before we get into that, I want to put to rest any concern that I might be doing something that I shouldn't be doing. You see, it is technically not legal to work on cars for compensation out of your home garage. Now, I am not going to be working on this for compensation. Andrew is a good friend of mine. We have been friends for several years now. We've been to multiple car shows. We text almost every day, either directly or through group chats. And I am helping him to do something that he can't do to his car and that no mechanic is willing to even try. Before we get into that, I want to pick up the camera and take you on a tour of this absolutely gorgeous show car of a Honda Prelude. Now, as I said, this is a 1988. This car has, I believe he said it just crossed 120,000 miles. This car is barely broken in, and as you can see, it is just factory perfect, just in almost every single way you could look at this car. Now, these wheels he just had put on, these are the ones that I hooked him up with from the parts car that we got to do the project that I'm going to tell you about in just a couple of minutes. We have some very common Prelude issues here. The sunroof has just a tiny bit of peeling on the sunroof seal here. This happens to all of them. Actually, mine isn't on this side. It's actually on the other side, which is kind of interesting to see here. But other issues that most cars have, like the trim coming apart here and exposing the metal underneath, you don't have that here. Another very common thing with Preludes is the hood windshield wiper squirter bar tends to warp. Now, mine isn't warped, but it also doesn't sit flush on the hood, so it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. None of them are perfect, and that is a very hard thing to find in perfect condition. Now, what we should do, if we had any sense within the Prelude community, hint, is find a perfect one and 3D scan it and reproduce it. You guys, I know you're out there. You can do this. This is a part that needs to be made for our community. Let's go inside and actually sit inside this car because it really is an experience. First thing I notice when I get in the car, the door closes so nicely. There's no rattles. It just is. So if you are aware of Honda Preludes, the first thing you would look at if you get inside this car is you're going to find we have a clock button cover. You're going to see we have a stick shift, a big long donkey dong stick shift. We have an unbroken seatbelt cover. Dude, this is so rare. You can see there's a piece of tape here. One of the clips may be broken. I would not dare touch this thing because you look at this thing a little too hard and it will snap in half. So I'm not touching it, but probably, I'm guessing what happened was one of the little clips got worn out, so that's why it's taped here. This thing is incredibly fickle. There are reproductions, but they are not as good as the original. The slot underneath for tapes, again, never had anything. I don't even think it's had tapes in there. Like, it's so clean. Glove box probably has some personal information in it. So we have, oh my God, we have factory documentation for this car. I don't want to go through it too much because there might be personal information in there, but it's also might be fragile, and I don't want to screw it up. Notice how carefully I am opening and closing this glove box. It's very common for these glove boxes to break, and I don't want to do that to my friend's car. And then we have our flip-up headlights work on demand. That is not something that my car can do because My relay is super slow. I press the button and nothing happens. And a lot of times I have to just turn on the stock. Moving on into the trunk, we have, well, it's a big trunk that's full of stuff. And this is full of Andrew's show car stuff, basically. We have a car cover. We've got probably some cleaning product over here. We've got his poster board for when he takes it to car shows. And these are the original hubcaps that were on the car before he put these beautiful rims on the car. And you may notice something here. And if you've noticed it, congratulations, because you know what we're going to be doing. And if you haven't noticed it yet, let's talk about it right now. So I am going to be helping my friend Andrew fix a critical flaw in his car. No, I'm not talking about the warped hood squirter bar. I can't help him with that. I am going to help Andrew install four-wheel steering on this beautiful red Prelude. Now, installing four-wheel steering in this car isn't that difficult, but there are some challenges. And the challenges lie in the last thing that I want to show you before we get to work. So we are under the hood of this Prelude. The hood weighs about 75,000 pounds. But you can see just how clean and just gorgeous everything is. Every clip is here, every little retainer piece, every little bolt, every screw, every bracket. And that's the problem. There's so many little pieces that need to be accounted for here. There's, if I can set this down without messing anything up, there's this here. What the hell? I haven't seen this in decades. I don't even remember that existed. There's all these stupid little ducting tubes for the intake system that are just everywhere. And getting to the parts that we need to get at, we need to remove a whole bunch of stuff around here. And it is going to be a major pain. And I am actually very, very scared that I'm going to break something. This is a show car. This is a car that you don't want to mess up. And I'm about to mess with it. All right. Challenge accepted. To do the four-wheel steering conversion on this Prelude, we need steering racks. These are the major components, and we have two racks, which I'll get into in just a second. We have the front rack here. We have the rear rack here. We have the subframe. The other subframe is outside, along with the shaft that connects the two racks. This shaft runs down the middle of the car. It's just got a couple of U-joints on there, and it connects the two shafts. It connects the two steering boxes physically with the shaft in between the two. No fluid runs to the back of the car. This is a completely sealed steering rack. I've never opened one up in my life, and I don't intend to start in this video. You do not need to open this. But the front rack I had professionally rebuilt. I took it down to my friends at Smith Brothers, and they sent it off to their rebuilder, and they did a really, really nice job. But those are the major components. It's mechanical. It's very straightforward, but there's some things you need to do. Another thing you need to know about is the hardware. So we have in this bucket toolbox, we have eccentric bolts. This is one of the most important ones. You will have a very hard time finding these if you don't have them. I believe Carolina from Bob 3R Garage sells them. Then you have the big long bolts that hold the subframe to the car. You can probably get these reproduced if you need to, but those eccentric bolts are extremely difficult to find. Bushings, I'm going to reuse the bushings. This is from the car that I pulled at the junkyard. These are not as good as the ones that I pulled from the parts car in Lancaster, which is over here on my workbench. So these bushings are healthy. They're going to clean up just fine, and we're going to go ahead and reuse them. Before we put the car on the ground, of course, we're going to double check to make sure that everything is nice and tight, but there's no reason to throw these out unless you really, really want to. You can find these. This is like a mix and match situation, though. You're going to have to cross-reference from other cars, trim them down. I did that in a previous video on my car. And we got some of the brackets. And this is the same hardware again. I just bagged it up really nicely because I had more time to work with Andrew's rack. One of the key differences between the 88 and 89 and the 9091 is this thing right here. This is another thing you need to be aware of if you're going to do this conversion. We have the power steering oil fittings. On a two-wheel steering car, we'll show you that once we pull it out of Andrew's. This has 3 ports, but on the four-wheel steering, it has a 4th port. But on the 9091, the ports are metal. 88 and 89, they're plastic. Now, I've said this many, many times on my channel. I don't do how-to content, but this is one of the very rare exceptions. I've done this before. I also know that there are currently a few people out there right now that are either thinking about doing it to their car or in the process of doing it to their car. And I want to help you out as much as I can because this is really straightforward, but there are some things you need to know, and I don't want you to have to learn it the hard way. Also, keep in mind, this is a 3rd generation Honda Prelude, which means they are inherently a pain in the ass to work on. If you haven't worked on this car before, I definitely do not recommend this to be the first thing that you do. Now with that, let's get straight to work. The first thing I want to do with this car is loosen the lug nuts by hand. Now most people, when they're doing this conversion, probably just going to attack it with your impact gun and just zip them right off. But this is a show car, which means the lug nuts are perfectly polished, and they're actually, I can tell just from standing here looking at them, they're brand new. I don't want to scuff up the finish. So we're going to take these things off by hand the slow way. I'm going to do this 4 more times. I'll see you when I get the car off the ground. We need to put this thing on jack stands, and I am going to put the jack underneath the center tow hook here because that is a decent jack point. To jack up the rear, I used the subframe itself. Well, this is a good teaching moment because when you put a jack stand under a car, you bring the car down and the jack stand isn't holding the car, you have a problem. So we have to balance this out. I am going to double check the other side, and I'm also going to bring the front up because the front is like 1 notch lower than the rear. So if I can just even them out, I'll be happy. So the first step in our adventure here is to remove the existing hardware. You can see that this is obviously not 4-wheel steering, so we need to take off everything that is not 4-wheel steering. So we need to remove this arm. We need to remove the subframe. We don't need to remove these lower control arms, but we do need to disconnect them from the subframe. And we're also going to free up some room by removing the sway bar. The sway bar is easy to put back on. Once we've removed those, we've got 4 bolts that drop the subframe. They're 17 millimeter. There's one back here, there's one there, and then there's corresponding on the other side. And then this whole subframe drops out, easy peasy. So to remove the arms, we have to take out these cotter pins and pull out these castle nuts, and then we're gonna whack it with a pickle fork. You don't need to use a pickle fork, but we're gonna use a pickle fork. The cotter pin out, the castle nut is a 17 millimeter, which this is not a 17. Since we're not saving this ball joint, we're going to go ahead and use the pickle fork to remove it. So real quick, Andrew, you don't know this yet, but I'm going to touch up some of this for you. This is the factory rubberized undercoating. It is flaking off in some places. If I see that anywhere, I'm going to go ahead and spray a fresh coat on for you. I'm not going to do the entire car, but I'm going to do some of the problem areas, and hopefully you'll be able to circle back to that at another date. This bolt is a 19 millimeter. Probably should. If you get any resistance from anything, don't be shy to use the peanut butter blaster. So I already know this bolt is going to interfere with the tie rod arm on the way out. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 17 on there, not a 16, and loosen that bolt so that we can drop this arm down. There you go. The sway bar is also a 12 millimeter. And then you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. Exciting, fun, fun, fun. I fucking love 35-year-old cotter pins. Yeah, this is the most fucking fun. We are off to a great start with all of the fun that we're having. Whoever decided to put the cotter pin in from this direction, what the hell is wrong with you? This goes straight into the brake rotor. You could have just, I mean, there's another hole right here. You could have gone in from this direction, and then it would have been so much easier to just pull it straight back out. But no, you had to do it from this direction. You ass. We're making progress. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Hey! Finally. Okay. Meow. 17 mil. There you go. There. It's four-wheel steering already. See? 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 Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Uh-oh. Wait, we might be okay. Yeah! Okay. That's off. Next thing is to drop the subframe. And then we're pretty much done in the back. Come on. There you go. Yeah! Alrighty. The next thing we want to do is disconnect the lines from the two-wheel steering rack. So we do that by removing this cover, and then there's 4 connectors going into the rack. But we don't want to go ripping into the lines right away. We want to soak them in some peanut butter blaster while we go do some other things. Oh, that one had some rust on it for sure. We really want to take out everything that is in the way of this rack. So that's going to be the sway bar, the downpipe, and this cross brace here. We want to get that all out of the way because while it might be possible to do this job without dropping all of this stuff, well, you definitely need to drop this stuff. But you might be able to do it without dropping the downpipe. It is a colossal pain in the ass maneuvering this with a downpipe in, so we're going to take it out. We may end up dropping this entire exhaust system because look at the bolt to the catalytic converter. Oh my God. Oh your God. Oh all the gods. That is rusty. I want nothing to do with that bolt. With all of these bolts, I'm going to do my best to begin loosening them by hand before I attach any kind of machinery because that will give me a good feel for whether or not this is going to strip out. There's a couple of bolts that you just can't even get started with by hand. In particular, the header bolts up into the downpipe. But aside from that, you can get most of them by hand. We're going to drop that out. We'll clean that up before it goes back in the car. You see that bolt there? That's actually a nut on a stud, and that one over there. The threads behind the nut stripped out, and so they're just sitting there, stuck in there. I have to cut those out somehow. How am I going to do that? I have no idea. I at least have no idea how to do it without pulling the radiator. I really don't want to pull the radiator. You know, with those exhaust nuts, it's always a gamble whether or not they're going to come off. And this time, it looks like the odds were not in my favor. The next problem that we're going to cause for ourselves is going to be right here. We need to disconnect all of these lines. They've been soaking for a little while at this point, but this again is another gamble. These could round out, and I may be left with bigger problems. When it comes to these flare nuts, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. This is one of those times where it really makes a difference to get high quality tools. Don't mess around with AutoZone flare nut wrenches on these things because they flex a lot more than the higher quality snap-ons. It's just worth it. It is so much, you will save yourself so much time and money and heartache using a premium brand name wrench on these. Yeah. Oh, that was nice. And now for the high pressure line, which is not a 14. The good news about this being SAE is that I have an SAE flare nut wrench. Thank you to my Uncle Doug for saving this project potentially. Ah, there you go. So now we can run these out. I'm going to get the drain pan under here so that all of the fluid can not leak out onto the floor. Since this is all stuff that needs to come off anyway, I decided to drop the exhaust. That included the 3 exhaust hangers at the muffler. There's one in the center, and then there's 2 on either side of the downpipe connection to the catalytic converter. And then there's the bracket on the downpipe to the block in the back. And my idea here is to get some weight on these stripped out studs so that hopefully they will catch some thread and thread themselves out. So this one over here, I think, is the one that has the weight on it. Oh, wait, yeah, it dropped. Dude. All right, are you going to be good to me? What are we doing here? It's off. It's off. It's off. So it is off, but because of the angle of the exhaust pipe, it's not going to come off of the studs. So now all we have to do is slip our motorcycle jack underneath some point in the middle of the exhaust system to straighten it out. And then this whole thing is going to come down. This is not going to be fun to reinstall. But that is a problem for future me. And that guy has a lot more skill and patience than I do. But look at this exhaust system. This whole thing is resonators. This is bananas. I've never seen anything like this. You know, if you live in California, you really have no reason to buy a Rust Belt car. Just buy a California car. You're not going to spend any less money buying a car from the other side of the country. If you don't want to replace your tie rod ends, there's a way to cheese this. You can unlock the tie rod end and then spin the tie rod and unthread it from behind. But we are going to replace these tie rod ends, so we're not going to cheese it here. I did make things a little bit harder on myself just now because you do need to remove these tie rod ends. And it would have been easier with the tie rods still mounted in the car. But all you need to do if you forget, like I just did, is run the castle nut on, a couple of threads, and you're back in business. So we need to unlock that. And then take this back off and then spin this out. And looks like we're going to need to hold on to the tie rod with a 12 millimeter, not a 14. Next, let's remove the sway bar. It's not entirely necessary, but it does give us a little bit more breathing room. And so for these end links, you grab the center nut here, and you can hold it while you remove the bottom nut. Out. And we'll clean that up and make it look pretty when we put it back in. The next thing we need to do is disconnect the steering shaft. I'm sorry about the light, but we got a little bit of flicker, but there's nothing I can do about it. I need to be able to work. What we're looking for down here is where the steering shaft connects to this universal joint that goes to the steering column. So it's a little bit hard to see, but I've got socket extensions I'm using to point right at it. This bolt right here is what you need to remove. It is a 10 millimeter. So once you remove that, you also need to remove the bolt up at the top here. And that you're probably going to need to turn the steering wheel a little bit in order to reposition to get at it. You need to remove that one so that you can slide the whole assembly, the U-joint, up so that you can have it clear the steering shaft when you go to reinstall. So this is how I've got the socket on there. I've got the swivel socket on my 10 millimeter out to my extensions. And if you push on it too hard one way or another, the steering will turn. You might be able to get your steering to lock, but for some reason the steering wheel has not locked on me yet. So you just gotta have a little bit of finesse. Don't go apeshit on it, and you'll be okay. Notice I was able to slip the steering joint up, so now the shaft into the rack is completely free. We are ready to drop this rack. Now, one thing you might be concerned about is centering the steering wheel. You don't need to worry about that on this car. These third generation Honda Preludes do not come with a clock spring behind the steering wheel, so you don't need to worry about centering anything up. You just need to worry about getting it all put together. Once it's all together, all you need to do is pop the steering wheel off and reposition it. Not a big deal at all. So here's where things start to get interesting. We need to pull this rack out. And in order to do that, of course, there's these two braces here that hold it in, but you also need to have the rack shortened as much as possible on the driver's side. So that means either go to the driver's side tie rod and shove it in, or go to the passenger side and pull it out as far as it'll go. And I'll show you why in just a minute. Oh. And so this is why you want to shorten the driver's side tie rod, because you need to shift the entire thing over to the passenger side so that you can clear the subframe. And then once you've cleared the subframe, you come out the other direction. And so there you go. The two-wheel steering rack isn't that bad. It's the four-wheel steering rack that's the total drama queen. But this is a really good opportunity to clean things up, to spray things down with some rust neutralizer, rubberized undercoating before we reassemble. The next thing we need to do is to cut this bracket to make room for our four-wheel steering pumpkin. The four-wheel steering Prelude has this bracket kind of flattened out a bit, which you could try to do with a sledgehammer, but I cut mine out 20 years ago. The car has 300,000 miles on it, and it's still going strong. So you could trim this down, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. The most important thing when you're making cuts like this is that you're comfortable with where you're working and that you're being safe. I'm wearing safety goggles. Yes, I was shooting sparks directly at the tank, but the tank is properly sealed, so I didn't have to worry about that really. If you're going to be super paranoid, you could put a welding blanket, tuck it up in here or something, but that would risk getting it caught in the wheel. That's another thing you really need to be careful when you're in a spot like this, is that you're cutting only the thing that you're trying to cut and not something else unintentionally. When you're making cuts like this, you don't want to push yourself. You don't have anything to prove to anybody. You don't need to prove what a tough guy you are. You don't need to prove how skilled you are. Take your time and make sure you do it right. I mocked up the other rear steering rack that I pulled from the junkyard, and it fit pretty good. I might need to do a little bit more trimming, but if we do, it's totally fine. We'll just address it at that time. Right now, I'm going to kind of deburr it, take off all those extra shavings, and we'll be able to paint this and touch it up and make it look like a piece of art. We got most of the parts that we've touched cleaned up and repainted and ready to reinstall. There's still some more left to do, but we have plenty enough to continue moving forward. The next thing I want to do is install the front rack. The reason why I'm moving back up to the front when I was working on the rear just now was because, well, I'm letting paint dry. The biggest challenge left ahead of us is the oil fitting that connects from above the subframe to the output shaft. And that's going to be a real pain in the ass because, as I mentioned before, it's behind all of this crap if I'm coming up from the top. Well, unfortunately, Honda managed to just fill every cubic millimeter of this engine compartment with plastic crap. And there's just too much plastic crap in the way to get my hands up from underneath the car. So we got to do this the hard way. We have to remove the entire intake system, basically. Pretty much from here back, we have to remove the intake charge tube, the box, and the stupid resonators that are behind it. You'll see just how bad it is as I take things out. That's the fitting that we need to replace. That fitting has 3 lines coming out of it. We need to replace it with the one that has 4. I still have no damn clue how I'm going to get to it. Probably, I think I can pop off the charcoal canister. I think that just hangs there, and then move that off to the side, and then I'll be able to get my hand in there onto the little clips that hold the oil passages on. Hopefully those aren't seized. Hopefully I don't have to cut and replace those. That would really make my day suck. We're back under the car because I remembered how to remove this fitting. So we've got underneath here, right just to the right of the shifter cables, we've got this hose here, but we've also got this one here. Underneath that, you see where my fingers are. This is the bracket that holds the oil fitting. So you see we have actually a pretty good line of sight here, and we may even be able to get a wrench on this bolt if you really want to. I'm not going to do that. But you see here I've got my needle nose pliers, and this is all you have to do is with your needle nose pliers, pinch that fitting, push it out. Now, if you have a 90 or 91, this oil fitting is actually all metal, and you do have to remove the 10 millimeter socket here, and you should be able to get to it with a wrench. So you can see the difference between the fitting that I removed and the fitting I need to put in. So I went ahead and added the length of hose I needed to the new fitting. This way I can cut it to length underneath the car, and I don't have to fuss with it in that nightmare. So we need to reconnect the other 3 lines. I don't think it'll be that bad because they came off of this pretty nicely. The only problem is that this clip is broken, unfortunately. There's nothing I can really do about that. I may throw a zip tie over the center of this thing just to hold everything down, but it's not going to matter. that was more difficult than it should have been. I don't know what Honda was thinking by putting this tube here, blocking the charcoal canister, but maybe they decided reinstalling charcoal canister would be a fucking dashboard out job. I don't know, but that was infuriating. And I ruined the stupid little clip because these clips are one-time use only, and it's impossible to remove because of the ridge on the tube, so I had to ruin it. And just fuck all of this. Fuck all of that. If you can do this without removing that stupid charcoal canister, maybe you've already removed that fucking Tupperware party underneath the intake manifold. If that's you, because that's what happened to me, I didn't have that bullshit underneath my intake manifold, so it was a lot easier on my car 20 years ago. Fuck all of this. Damn. All right, we're okay. Everything's okay. The good news is that it's all reassembly from here. So I have to reconnect that stupid line and put a new clip on it. Probably going to use a hose clamp that I have sitting around. And then I got to put in that intake box. And then things are going to get a little bit better from there. I hope. I think. I'm pretty sure. Let's go back to time lapse. Once I got the Tupperware party all resolved, I made some repairs to the vacuum lines. I put a couple of unions on here because this line that connected up here was rock hard. So I trimmed it back to a point where I could fit a union in and then a short length of healthy hose. And then I had to replace this clamp because it fell. So I also put some heat shrink tubing on it just to kind of make it less obvious that I made the repair. This is a really nice car and I wanted to keep it looking really nice and as factory as possible. I did the same thing over here because this hose was seized to the port, so I had to cut it back. It actually tore right off of the port itself. So I had to trim it back a little bit more, get a union on there, and I put some electrical shrink tubing on it. And then to prevent that all from happening again, I put just a tiny amount of grease on the ports so that they would come in and out nice and easily. Phrasing. Now that all the nightmare stuff is done, let's get to the good stuff. We have to go back down underneath the car and install our front rack. So this is probably going to suck the most. Reinstalling the front four-wheel steering rack is a nightmare. You have to start on this side, shove it up all the way. It's the opposite of how we removed the two-wheel steering rack. The difference is the four-wheel steering rack is a lot bigger and heavier. So, I hope you ate your Wheaties. Because I did. My arms feel like they're going to fall off. And it needs to go like that-ish. And so now, we do need to rotate it so that we could get the, oh God, Jesus, fuck. This is gonna suck. Yeah, he doesn't want to cooperate. All right, you don't want to play ball. There you go, tie rod end. I had to turn the tie rod to point up, because otherwise it won't work. This thing barely fits. And as you maneuver it over to the left, once you've gotten it on the right, you have to rotate it. And I'm not exactly sure how you accomplish that. But it's possible because I've done it. You can bend these lines back just a little bit. Just obviously don't crease them. And the more you bend them, the worse you're making things for yourself as you reinstall the flare nuts. You gotta get in there. Come on. All right, so now let's move it all the way over, or as far over to the left as we can. So the two-wheel steering brackets are the exact same as the four-wheel steering. I've compared them side by side, and I was a little bit surprised because I didn't know that. But because the brackets that I got with the four-wheel steering rack are cleaner, I'm using those. Now that you've got them all on, it's time to torque this to spec. Click, 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 and then you want to double check your torque specs. Click, 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 click. The next worst thing we need to do is reconnect these oil lines. So we just use the wrenches that we had earlier today. That was like 2 days ago. And then we're gonna dump fluid all over our face and start reconnecting lines. You wanna find your thread? You wanna find your thread? You do. Okay, you're started, good. You wanna find your thread? No, you don't. You don't. Oh, you lied to me. You f***er. Do we really need to connect this? Does this really need to be connected anyway? Like, can we just not? Would you just thread in? Would you just not fight me for once, ever? I'm sure if we were doing an actual Honda factory installation of this hose, it would run all the way over here and then behind the rack and then loop around and then come out through here and then make a turn and come out into the rack. But we're not worried about that. We're just gonna get the job done. Yeah, we can clean up a little bit. We do have to go back upstairs for the steering shaft connecting to the rack, but we can move on with our lives. Remember when we removed this? We're doing literally the exact opposite. So we have to slide the universal joint down around the steering input shaft. It's a little bit tricky, but it doesn't matter which way you orient anything. So just get it on there and we'll be able to make adjustments to the steering centering from the steering wheel itself. You need to secure the bottom connection to the steering rack first, and I'll show you on this old rack. You see here how we have our top and bottom connection. This is the top connection that goes into the steering shaft, the steering column. The steering column doesn't matter where the bolt lands, but the steering rack does. And that's because of this groove in here. So this is where the bolt lands and tightens up around the splines. At the top, it's designed a little bit differently. It's a lot more, it doesn't matter where up and down it lines up. Now with all the ass pain out of the way, we can start having some fun. Let's get this drive shaft in here. I have cleaned it up and sprayed it down with a coat of enamel and a coat of satin clear, and looks really, really nice. It doesn't need to be perfect. We just want it to be protected. And you'll notice here, if this looks a little familiar to you, this is the old steering rack bellows that is going to serve as the boot to protect our steering joint. So we're going to feed this in from front to back, and we're not going to secure it down or anything. We want that wiggle room to move back and forth when we go to install the rear rack. So these steering joints are indexed. You can only put them together in one way, and that is really good for us, but also can make the assembly a little bit of a challenge. My camera is never going to focus on the index, but there is a little slot here that you are not going to be able to see, and that corresponds with this groove right here. So that means it can only go together this way. And you want to put the longer side on the steering shaft. It also has an index. They're both indexed. So you have to locate that on the steering shaft right there. So the output shaft on the four-wheel steering rack, the exact same thing. So that's why I say it only goes together one way. And here is the index groove on the output shaft, and the bolt goes through this slot here. You just have to do that underneath the car, which is a little bit of a pain, but if you don't have the rear rack installed, it's a lot easier than it could be. Now that our steering shaft is installed, we got to start to install this rear rack. I cleaned everything up already, sprayed it with rubberized undercoating in all the spots that matter, did all of the rust control that I could. It's not perfect, but it's a whole hell of a lot better than it was before. If you want perfection, you got to pay for perfection. And since you didn't pay for this, all right, this is backwards. The brackets, of course, need to face the rear of the car. And we need to slip this over our lower control. Ow! Oh! Smash our fingers. We need to smash our fingers between the lower control arm and the subframe. Oh! Okay. Ow! God, that hurt. And now, oh, Jesus. And now we can bolt that in. Come on. Ow! I'm just going to smash my finger again. The very same finger that I smashed last time. That feels really, really good. I wonder if I could keep doing that. The next, and I believe the last of the very terrible things we need to do here, is to connect the steering shaft to the rear rack. And it's really terrible because it's there. You can't even see it. You kind of got to do it by feel. Now, this is really, really tough, and I'm not exactly sure how to do this. It's been a long time. So this very well may involve dropping the rack so that I can position things. But again, this only goes together one way. So this is really going to suck back here. Let's just go ahead and rip out the front of the steering shaft, because there is no way this is happening on the car. There's just no way. All right. So now we have all the wiggle room that we can hope to have. Let's drop the rack again. Oh, come on. God damn it. I think I'm really, really close. I know I'm close. I just don't know if I'm on it. Oh, God. It hurts. It's so pointy. Oh! I'm not only doing it this way to show that you could do it yourself, but I'm doing it this way because I have no friends. I think I'm in. I'm just not. I just need to shove it. Come on. You know what? I'm on the index. I'm going to go ahead and thread this in. I'm not going to torque it. I'm just going to thread it because I think I could get on the other side of this shaft and just shove it and make it slip in. I got so lucky. We are, I don't even know if you're seeing it. Yeah, there we are. I got so lucky. So now I have to very carefully push this rack back in and hope it doesn't slip off, because it actually slipped on there pretty easily once I got the index correctly. I finally got the center shaft on, and it's a bit of a bear. I'm going to show you how to do it on the spare rack that I have laying on the floor here. We're going to go ahead and pretend that this is the rear output, not the two-wheel steering input. It's the same idea. So this is a lot easier if you mock it up on the ground before you install it, because this will give you an idea of exactly where the steering shaft needs to connect and how much space you need between the steering shaft and the rack here. And you see here, it's not much space. So you're almost all the way back. So if you could just get this shaft onto the steering rack, what you want to do is go up to the other side and connect the other side up. And you see how there is a whole lot of space here on this end of the shaft? Well, you want to connect it to the rack and lock it in on the output shaft for the four-wheel steering output shaft. Lock that in, go ahead and screw that down. And then you have all of this play here to move this up and down and locate it at the rear rack. So you lock that in, you go back to the rear rack. So you need to turn it to your perspective in order to get the bolt in on the extension. You have your big long extension, and you're going to get it on, get the bolt into the extension, and you're just going to very carefully place it in here. And while it's in here, you're going to hold it with one hand, and with your other hand, roll back a little to the other side of the gas tank, and I'll show you what happens when you lock it in. And then so as you push it in, you're applying just a little bit of pressure on the bolt so that once you find your spot, it's going to push all the way through. And once it pushes through, you start to thread it. Thread it by hand. I cannot stress this enough. You want to know if you're getting any kind of resistance as you're threading this in, because this is really easy to cross thread and ruin the bolt. And I'd hate to have you go to the hardware store just because you went ape shit on this. I went ape shit on this, and I've done this before. I have experience with this, and I've ruined one of these already today. Another thing you want to make sure you don't do is do not forget the washer. It may or may not look like this. I've used a few that look like this, but I have also used some that look a little bit different. As long as you have a washer on there, that's what's important. I could not find torque specs on the subframe itself, so I torqued it down to about 80 foot-pounds of torque. That may be a little over. I think it's like closer to 70, but it's at 80, and it's comfortable there, and it's going to stay there. The control arm eccentric bolts are somewhere closer to 50 pounds, but I guarantee you no alignment tech is ever going to torque it to spec. So just make it tight. You're not going very far on it anyway. I will have to put on the little white caps that go on those, but we're going to spend some more time underneath this car anyway, and I'll get to it before I finish this up. The next thing we want to do is probably one of the most satisfying parts of this, and that is to install the rear tie rods. Now, why is installing tie rod ends so exciting? Well, that's because that is the last thing you need to do before you can see all four wheels steer. So let's go take a look at our workbench because I have part numbers for you. Now, the rear outer tie rod ends, you're not going to find as a Honda part number. This is Moog part number ES3616. This is a match for, I believe, a 2016 Hyundai Santa Fe. So their tie rod ends are a perfect fit on the rear. The front tie rod ends are from Beck Arnley, part number 101-4146. Beck Arnley is a subsidiary of Moog, and they are made in Japan, and you cannot get better for the Prelude or in general at all. All right, we have our tie rod end. We're going to thread it on here, and maybe I won't put it on upside down like a dumbass. Only a dumbass would do that. I totally didn't just spend the last hour doubting myself and thinking that maybe the 88s had a different rear suspension than the 89s. I wouldn't make a mistake like that. Nope, nope, nope. I do not make those types of mistakes. Never, never. There we go. Notice how I am not installing this cotter pin like a complete asshole. Notice how if you need to remove this cotter pin, you need to bend it forward and then pull it from back here this way where there is nothing for you to slam your hand into. The Zerk fittings are 7 millimeters, which is just an absolutely wonderful size to have. Sweet. This is why I was confused, because the front tie rod ends go in from the top, the rear tie rod ends come up from the bottom. And so if you did confuse the rear and try to put them on upside down, I'm not saying I did, but if you did, I would completely understand and empathize with your situation. Not saying that I would do such a thing, but if you did, I would understand. And if that's you, your secret's safe with me. I won't tell anyone, I promise. It's okay. So real quickly, I made a bit of a mistake when I was putting together the rear suspension. So you see we have the eccentric bolts that go through the lower control arms. Well, I forgot the eccentric washer. And the eccentric washer slips onto the other side of the bolt, and then you put this guy on top of it. But I didn't remember to put the eccentric washer on, so now I have to remove the nut and then slip this back on. So this is something you definitely don't want to lose. This is a little bit hard to find. You might be able to get them from Carolina, from Bob 3R Garage, but yeah, this you don't want to lose this. Now the other one is in. All right, so they're both corrected. They both have the eccentric bolt with the eccentric washer and the lock nut. We also installed the rear sway bar and connected the end links and the bushings. The bushings have grease on them. All of the bushings have grease on them. So we're done back here. We're going to move on to the center of the car where we're going to install the exhaust hanger and the heat shield. Before I move on from here, let's just get a good would you look at that, because it is so good. I mean, this car is miles beyond what it was when I got this car, and now it's going to drive so much better with that four-wheel steering. You may notice that the manifold is mounted upside down to my workbench. And that is because I have to do this the hard way, which is to cut the studs down and drill out every single hole. And then we have to retap it, and we have to get new bolts. So I opened up the gasket that I got from AutoZone and had delivered this morning, and it was totally wrong. I'm going to show a picture of it right here.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
And before we test drive this car, we also have a rebuild kit for the power steering pump. I do not have an O-ring for this thing. I'm going to have to match it up with something in my box, but that's okay. We've got the shaft seal here. We've got all of the seals inside, and we're just going to go ahead and replace that because this car has transmission fluid in it instead of power steering fluid. So a quick note, when you have a Honda in your power steering system, you need to put Honda power steering fluid. Very specifically, Honda power steering fluid, not ATF. I know ATF is used in many cars, but not Hondas. Before I release tension on the belt, I take a socket extension, one of the small ones, just like this, and I feed it through here underneath the pump. And that way, when the pulley turns, it's going to come up here and it's going to lock in place. Now, this bolt here is reverse threaded. It is righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. It's the only bolt on this car that I am aware of that is reverse threaded. Now, there may be a couple of others on the car that are reverse threaded that I am not remembering right now, but that is the one that I remember. So you turn this to the right, it will crack loose. If you're going ape shit on this bolt, you're doing something wrong. So definitely take your time, be aware of what you're doing, and don't just blindly start pushing on this. This is not a thick bolt. You'll snap this and it'll ruin your day. So this thing drops in like so, and you just kind of shove it in. And then we have our spring here. And then we have our gasket, which came off on my finger, our O-ring. And now that's pretty straightforward. We just slap this back on, and we just start with one bolt at a time, and we're going to cinch them down evenly. That I recorded myself taking this apart because I have tried to put it together wrong so many times just now that I had to go back and look at the footage. So this is the back piece that we just connected. We've got our wonderful gasket that never, ever slips out of alignment. You put that thing in and it will totally not slip out on you 47 times. And then we've got these sprockets here. These sprockets have three little marks on them, and from what I can tell, we know the orientation of this one for sure. We know that the threaded part goes to our pulley. So this side has the three little marks. We're going to go ahead and drop that in. Boom. And the other one, we're going to match it up because the three little marks are also on this one. So we're going to match that to our first one and drop that in. Then we have these two cylinders. These two cylinders, you want the little cutout of these cylinders to face the center of the body. Drop that in. And then drop that in. Okay? There you go. Now we have our figure 8. That's going to fit like this. You want the ridges facing the outside of the pump so it sits nice and flush. And then we've got our outer piece. I'm going to need to give this a spritz to clean it up a little bit. And we have our outer piece. It only goes on one way because of the dowel pins. And then we have our shaft seal. And I have to clean this one more time inside that shaft. Then we're going to slip our shaft seal on. You could put a little bit of power steering fluid on it to lubricate it. I don't know that it's entirely necessary, but we're going to do it just in case. All right, and again, this should only go one way. You see the little spring here? You want this side, this open side, to go down, inward, towards the center of the pump, and you press that in. We're going to go ahead and put these bolts in to close this all together before we go pressing that in, though. It's back together correctly, and I've checked it probably 5 or 6 times. It looks amazing. That's the thing that I can tell you about this for sure. Is it going to seal? Well, there's really only one way to find out. We got to put this thing on the car. We got to get some fluid in it and see what happens. I hope this thing is sealed up. I really do, because this is a complete pain in the ass. The biggest pain in the ass is tightening the belt. So let's get to it. So I got the pump hung on with these 2 mounts. It's tightened. Next, we're going to set the tensioner. Of course, we got a ton of slack here. And basically, once I removed the pump, I just left this thing on here because it is kind of a pain to locate. So we're just going to tighten it until really only as much as we have to. And we really want to avoid hitting the body of the car with your socket extension, like I totally did not just do. Got a long 14 millimeter that I'm going to shove down here onto this lock nut and tighten this down. So the next thing we need to do here is center out the steering racks. We only need to get it good enough to take it to the alignment shop. We are not going to do a full alignment here. I've tried to do it, and it's a lot harder than you may think. So I think the move here is to just get it good enough to take it to the shop. So we're underneath the car, and as you can see, I am not using the 4-wheel steering alignment tool. And that is because my 4-wheel steering alignment tool is all the way across town. So I'm going to show you how to do it without the tool. You see here we have a welding rod that is shoved into the steering rack. And that is because this welding rod just happens to be the exact diameter it needs to be to fit inside the hole. So if you don't have the tool, you can use anything that fits, and then you'll just need a friend or a wife to turn the steering wheel while you find that center position. The tool is a lot more sophisticated in that it has it is spring-loaded so that when you twist it in, you can just put it in there, twist it down, and turn the steering wheel until it finds the center lock position, and then the pin will pop into place and lock your rack. But we don't have that sophistication here, which is fine. We don't really need it, but that's the purpose it serves. Do you need the tool? Technically, no. Will it make your life a whole lot easier? Definitely yes. So what I'm going to do here is now that we've more or less found center in the rack, we're going to just eyeball the alignment just good enough so that we can make it down the street. And then I'm just going to take this welding rod over to the shop and say, here, this is how you find center. And they'll be able to take it from there. Of course, in order to achieve our eyeball alignment, we have a 14 millimeter of this rod here. We've got the lock nut, which is unlocked. And we're going to just adjust it to the point where we think it needs to be adjusted to. Now, again, this could be way, way, way wrong, but we're not really concerned with that. We just want it to not look like one side of the car is trying to turn into a circle. That's not a good alignment. Let's be clear about that. But it's going to get us down the street. You can see the rear is towed out, the front is towed in. Who cares? It's straight enough. It's going to get us there. With the distributor on the car, it is time to start it up and bleed the system. And you do that by turning the wheel back and forth with the car running. The good news for you guys is that you get to enjoy some gratuitous acts of 4-wheel steering. So one of the things we're looking for is, you see how in the reservoir we've got a bunch of bubbling? all of that little foam needs to come out. So we're gonna keep doing this with the car on jack stands, and then we're gonna do it again with the car on the ground. We have picked up Andrew's car from the shop after getting alignment. And after a quick stop at AutoZone to pick up something for another project, we're ready to take this thing for a drive. Now, it's rush hour, so hopefully, I don't have a horrible time doing this. But we're going to feel four-wheel steering. We're going to see how it tracks, how the alignment worked out. I know that these guys do really good work. They've done the alignment for my car before, so I don't expect any surprises. So right off the bat, the four-wheel steering feels great in this car. It's really pronounced coming out of the parking lot and moving around within the parking lot. This car seems to track straight as an arrow so far driving down the freeway. In terms of the actual driving experience, I gotta say, my car is a lot more fun to drive. This car, with its stock suspension, with its restrictive air intake, the restrictive exhaust system, my car breathes a lot better, and the suspension is a lot more engaging. Yes, I do have an appreciation for refinement over bumps, but at the same time, in a sports car, in something that's low to the ground, nimble, supposed to handle really well, I want to feel the feedback, and this suspension is not communicating it. And this restrictive intake and overly muffled exhaust, I put my foot into it and I'm not getting the noises that I want. I'm not getting the movement that I'm used to out of this car. So that tells me that my car, I'm not gonna say it's better, I'm just saying it's better for me. It's more tailored to the experience that I want out of a Honda Prelude. I can't even give this car the beans because there's no beans for it to give. Everything above 4,000 RPM is just like pointless. But that's okay. This is his car. This is how he chooses to enjoy it, and I'm really happy. I'm really honored that he had asked me to help him do this work on his car for him, because I got to work on something that's going to be in car shows. I got to work on something that someone else is very, very, very proud of. And that makes me really happy, because I am, not only am I helping other people, but I can walk around a show and say, I worked on that car. I worked on that car. And they're not my cars. That's a really rewarding feeling, and I'm starting to understand why I come from a family of craftsmen and restoration mechanics and people that had cars at shows that they don't own, that won trophies. I'm starting to understand that feeling, and it's a really great feeling. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. I know this is a long video, but this was a long process. There's a lot of work involved in this, and hope you learned something. If you're here to learn how to do a four-wheel steering conversion, I hope you learned something. So as always, if you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And if you don't like what you see, maybe you think converting a car to four-wheel steering is easy, you're wrong. But if that's you, leave a comment and tell me about what a great mechanic you are. The algorithm will love you for it. It'll drive more traffic and more people to see just how much better you are than me when you make these comments. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned for more gratuitous acts of four-wheel steering.